Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to continue on with the elementary JavaScript tutorials, lessons, whatever you want to call them. And today we're going to be looking at an introduction to strings in JavaScript. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're going to be using some different things. We're going to be using our console log. We're going to be using a for loop. We'll go into for loops a little bit later on in introduction to, actually for that one, we'll probably just call it introduction to for loops instead of form control. But let's first go over what are strings in JavaScript. Strings are anything that is within two quotes. You can think of them as a string of words, or as some other languages would also call them, you can look at them as an array of characters, even though we can actually take a string and turn it into an actual array of characters. So they're not quite the same thing, but either way, we can do something with them. An important note is that strings are both immutable and iterable. And we'll go over what that means here in a little bit. So let's start with what we have uncommented here. We have const first word is going to equal hello. And if we go ahead, well, before we do that, let's clear this guy. And then what we will do is we'll just go ahead and delete these. Now what we get, const log first word, we get hello up here. All right. Now, using double quotes is a way that we can do this, and there are reasons for using the different ways. So the second way we could declare a string, we'll just delete this entire thing, is we could use single quotes, and we get hello back here. Or what we could do is we could use backticks. Now notice when we add the backticks and it happened like this, and we have quotes in here, these quotes are printed out. And that is one of the reasons why we would use one of the three different ways of doing it. So a good example of that is if we wanted to write something like John's, what we could use is use the double quotes and use John's here with the single quote, and we get our apostrophe to show up correctly. If we changed this out to single quotes and we went John's here, that happens. If we add another single quote here, it has an issue. And in order to get something like this to work, what we would have to use here is a backspace character to escape out this apostrophe, and then it works. So that is some of the reasons for using the different quotation marks to do different things. Is sometimes depending on what you're using, you have to use different ones. My basic thing is that if I know I really need an apostrophe in there, and I'm not going to annotate it a different way, the default that I like to try and go with is just to use the double quotes as the start. The other main one you're going to use is the backticks, but we'll go over that, the reason for that, a little bit later on after we get into the rest of this. So what does it mean when I say that a string is iterable? What that means is we can actually iterate through each, and actually we'll bring this back. We can iterate through each of the indexes. So like an array, when we go into arrays, each one of these letters has an index in this string. And if this is your first introduction to computer science, most languages, when we reference an index, it always starts at a 0 index. So if I was to open up square brackets here and I enter in 0, what we should do is we should get the H. Okay, there it goes. Pops up H. If I change this to a 1, I should get the E. What that also means is to do something like this, what we can use is this for loop that's up here, and we can iterate over the list. as you notice. When we do this, we get HE, 2 L's, and an O. Because what this is going is it's going through each index of our first word, and it is printing out that index to the console. I guess I should say it's logging that index to the console. So that's what it means when we say it's iterable. But what does it mean when we say that it is immutable? Okay. What that means is here we have const first word hello. If we were to try and reassign this variable, we know it wouldn't work due to it being const. We can't just throw another string in there. Okay. But if I was to get rid of the const and do let, and instead here I did first word is equal to world, and then down here I console log that, I get world instead, because I'm changing the value of this variable to world. But what if instead of doing that, and I have this hello, that I wanted to change the first letter, instead of being a lowercase, to a capital H instead? If I uncomment this, and I'm assigning the first index to be H, we get a type error saying that we cannot assign to read-only property the 0 index of string hello. I can't directly change that string that's already assigned to this. I can't assign just that one letter. Now you can, but you have to do some different things to it. And then that will go over more of how to do that in what will be the beginner's level of strings and string manipulation. All right, for the last part of this, let's go ahead and just get rid of that guy. We're going to go over the last set of the backticks, or last way of creating a string, which is the backticks. For this, let's go ahead and do a second variable called second word, and that is going to equal, and we'll just use the classic thing, hello here of world, okay? Now, what we can do is if you want to pass more than one thing into a console log, add a comma, and we can do second word. And what we're going to get is that plus a space, and we get hello world. So what if we wanted to change some things around and maybe format this a little bit differently? You can do it like that. But what if we only wanted to pass one parameter in here? How would we go about doing that? So we're going to get into something called string concatenation. So we're going to say message, and this is going to equal, and what we're going to do is we can do first word plus second word, and then in here we'll pass in the message. Now what we're going to get is we're going to get it with no space. It's going to take the first word and just combine it right with the second word on top of it, and we're going to have one thing here. In order to do this to where we have a space in between, what we would have to do is do a string in here, add a white space character, add a plus sign on top of this, and then we get our hello world with a space in between. Now this is quite a bit of typing, and you know, if we made this super complicated, it could be a little difficult to read. So luckily JavaScript gives us a much easier way of doing that, that if we use backticks or accent marks, whatever you want to call them, what we can do is this allows us to do a formatted string concatenation. And how we do that is if we wanted to pass in a variable, what we would do is we could do $, and then curly brackets or handlebars, and then we add a white space. And then what we can do here is we could do another set just like that. And then inside of that, we pass in first word, and we'll pass in second word here. Do this again, Control-Shift. And just create another line here to get trigger. And notice there we have our hello world exactly how we wanted it. We could also, this also allows us to add a normal string. Let's say we wanted to add an exclamation point to the end. We get an exclamation point. So that is a basic introduction to strings in JavaScript. Once again, we have three ways of creating them. We can use double quotes, single quotes, or backticks, depending on how we want to do things. If we wanted to add things like apostrophe S's and things like that, add apostrophes in there, then we need to use the double quotes, then use the single quotes to make an apostrophe, or we have to escape the apostrophe using a backslash. String formatting can be handled both by using string concatenation by itself or using backticks with the special syntax of a $sign and curly braces with a variable name. And strings are iterable, but they are also immutable. Thanks for watching.